Chiefs got it done in the freezer. Now they know a couple of things, that this defense is for real, even in the postseason, that they know who they are on offense, and they're ready for anything. Bills, Texans, or otherwise. Today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors. Chiefs Kingdom around the world. We're brought to you today by Gametime. Download the Gametime app and create an account and use our code Locked On for $20 off of your first purchase. You would have had a great chance at last-minute tickets last night in the Chiefs freezer game, but you can check out Gametime to get that done today. Lot to go over. I was absent here. Thanks for Matt Derrick for joining Chris last night, locking it down post-game. But what did we come away with? This offense has to know who they are, and I think they got a giant clue last night. The defense is as good as we felt it was, and it doesn't matter. We're starting right now with who the Chiefs play. Couple of scenarios, and I couldn't care less. I'll take the Bills. I'll take the Texans. Means nothing to me. Do you care?
I do. Actually, I want the Bills. I want to go to Buffalo mainly because I do think the Texans have a much better chance at knocking off the Ravens than the Steelers. So in my mind, I want a chance at hosting the AFC Championship game again in Arrowhead, which is possible if the Texans go to Baltimore. I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but I think that's a much more likely scenario than Pittsburgh. And I think Kansas City can beat Buffalo in Buffalo. They showed that they have the ability to play in cold weather and play well in cold weather. And I think that what we saw in that game is the physicality that this team is going to need to bring every single week to get back to the Super Bowl and have a chance to win it again.
You're thinking long game, and I like that. And folks, if you don't know him, that's my partner, Chris Clark. You can find him at Chiefs Corner, where you can get all the quarterback information, the cap information, everything that you need to know. We're brought to you today, obviously, by Gametime here on the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every single day for free on every platform, starting here on YouTube, where I'd ask you to like this video, subscribe to the channel so you watch the next one, and check out the actual bell so you get the notifications. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, NFL33.com, as well as RGR Football. Now, I like the long-term look in that you're chasing down the one scenario that still exists for the Chiefs to host an AFC Championship, and that does require somebody knocking off the Baltimore Ravens. But I got to tell you, I ain't scared. I was concerned. I was going into this ball game a little bit like, do they have to have it to go? And I thought maybe they had to have everything go their way. But what we saw last night tells me that they can handle Diggs and company. They can handle CJ Stroud and company. And I really think they can handle Lamar Jackson and company. So for me, it comes down to what's the easiest path to get there. And I like the way that you're thinking. If it doesn't go that way and the Chiefs face, say, CJ Stroud at home in Arrowhead, I'm ultimately confident in that, because I think as good as CJ's been, and kudos to him for what he's done and how he and DeMeco Ryans have righted that ship in Houston, I don't think they're prepared to play the Chiefs team we saw last night in Arrowhead. Do you?
I don't. I don't think that Stroud is going to be ready for Spags. I think Spags is going to have something up his sleeve, in his bag of tricks, and he's going to have something that Stroud hasn't seen before, and probably something that Spags really hasn't put on camera very much this season. He always seems to dial something up that's a little bit different for rookie QBs or young QBs that he's facing for the first time. So I do think that that's going to play into this. And you look at what they're missing in Houston. I mean, I don't think Tank Dell is going to be back. That's going to be a problem, obviously. So in that scenario, you're going to be in a situation where their offense is going to be good, but is it going to be good enough to score as many points as they did against the Cleveland Browns? The Cleveland Browns defense has been good all season, so that was kind of surprising to see how that turned out. But I still believe in the Chiefs defense. They showed last night they have attitude, they have the ability to be physical, and they're going to take it to the team that they're playing.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Now, I didn't get a chance to run down my ex-players last night because of the situation. And I know what you and Matt talked about. You tell me if you think I'm wrong. I think the guys that stood out the most to me, clearly, L'Jarius Sneed is among them. But he's not the only one. I felt like, other than
Captain
the big
L'Jarius
play,
Sneed? Sorry.
Captain. Yeah, hey, I like that. Other than the one big play, I thought Trey McDuffie played an exemplary game. I thought he let one get away from him, made a single mistake, and he recovered really well.
Yeah, and I said this on Twitter, and I want your opinion on this because what it seems like to me is when Trent is trying to locate a football, whether it's thrown short, thrown long, whatever, on a deep ball, I think that's where he struggles. I think that's one of the places in his game where he struggles. If you go back to the Super Bowl against A.J. Brown, he struggled on a play almost identical to what it was last night. Obviously, no plays the same, but very close to what it was last night. I think that's one thing he struggles with is tracking the ball, especially on those deep passes. You know what? With the way he plays the rest of football, I really don't care if he struggles at tracking the ball. That's something you can work on. Generally speaking, that's probably something that you either have or you don't. You can work on it, but I still think it's something he struggles with. I don't really care, though. Like I said, look at what he did on the Tyreek Hill out pass. He passed off his coverage because he wasn't covering Tyreek Hill on that play. He passed off his coverage to Justin Reed and went after Hill and hit him behind the line of scrimmage, almost identical to what he did against Tyreek Hill against the Dolphins game. Or I'm sorry, in the Germany game against the Dolphins, where he stripped him. The only difference was he hit him just a little too early to be able to get a strip on that scenario.
I agree completely. Now, Patrick got moved around a little bit last night, but the other guy that I wanted to shout out because I felt like he did an admirable job earlier in the week, he was still having tingling in some of his fingers, but Donovan Smith stepped up and yes, the pass rush depleted, but he gave up 2 hurries and that's it. Patrick got hurried a little bit, not the end of the world, didn't allow a contact on the quarterback. And that's what I really care about. So kudos to Donovan Smith for losing his job for a little bit and then stepping back in, getting hurt and then having to recover yet again. I thought his performance actually helped them get some stuff done.
Absolutely. I thought he played really well. And you're right. He did not have a huge challenge on his hands because the Dolphins don't have their big pass rushers. But for what he was dealing with, I thought he did really well. And there has been people making the rounds of, he held Justin Houston on the play that Christian Wilkins got the roughing the passer penalty that gave the Chiefs the first down. Problem is Justin Houston did a swim move. Rip move. That is specifically stated in the rules. That is not a holding call.
It's because of the nature. If the pass rushing player opts to rip under and come underneath the extended arm of the offensive tackle, it's instant. The arm then wraps around. There's no way around that. It's the defensive pass rush choosing to do that. And so that's why they don't make that call. And you're absolutely right. That's why it's laid out in the rule. So overall, a lot to take away from this game. What did the offense get out of it? That's coming up later in the show. And next, we're going to talk about just how good this defense is and what we saw from last night. But first, a message from our pals that are going to help you out. After what was a super cold but really thrilling ball game, a couple of things stand out. A lot of those stands had empty seats. And if you wanted to get last-minute tickets, you wanted to get them cheap. I mean cheap. They went down to $50 last night in the cold. I was tempted to jump on a plane and come out there and get them. If I had to do that, I would have used Gametime, and I think you should have done it too because it makes your life simple. You can see the seat from the app and the view that you're going to have of the ballgame. You're going to get the best deal, whether it's an Arctic zone or a quick zone that's in the app that gives you the best deals over and over and over. They'll even give you 110% back if you find a ticket price for the same seat less somewhere else. It makes life simple if you're getting last-minute tickets in particular. So take the guesswork out of getting to the game and getting those tickets or performance or any other venue. Download the Gametime app, create the app, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, all you got to do is grab the Gametime app, create the code, and use our code LOCKEDON for $20 off. It's last-minute tickets, it's lowest prices, and it is guaranteed. Now, what isn't guaranteed is that you're always going to feel like you're prepared. I like to feel prepared. So for me, it's something that I go out of my way to really get done. And life gets at you quick. Escaping, especially when you're a little bit under the weather, that escape helps. But especially if you went to that ball game last night, you might be a little under weather today. If you feel like you want to fight that off, there is something that can help you be prepared. and that is from Jase Case. The Jase Case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that give you treatment against a long list of bacterial illnesses, respiratory infections, sinusitis, all kinds of things. They get you prepared. All that stuff could happen to anybody, especially if you're out on a late, cold, and very, 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 very fun ball game that you had in Kansas City. If you want to get in on it, it makes life simple. You get to have your case reviewed by a board-certified physician and get medications dispensed from a licensed pharmacy direct to your door at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared, and go to Jase Case to figure it out. JaseMedical.com. Use our code LOCKEDON. You'll get $20 off your order. That's JaseMedical.com for $20 off of the Jase Case. Thanks for being with us here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And yes, this is a Monday on what was a wild card weekend, but one that I'm very, very excited about because the bricks have been laid, the foundation is set, and this stone wall continues to grow. And that's what I'm relieved about. I talked about in the first segment. I was trying to figure out exactly what I was hoping to take away. And this is what it is that you can play good defense all regular season long. In the playoffs, your weaknesses usually get exposed because A, those teams have better talent, and B, they have the time to do the research on you, to do the film work and pick apart where your game is. The Chiefs said, no, not today. It ain't happening. I'm going to step my game up. And the entire defense, as good as they've been all season, took that much step forward. And I thought it was on all levels. I was really happy with George Karlaftis. I thought both Drew Tranquill and Nick Bolton played a hell of a game. And obviously what you got from the D-backs was really encouraging. This stone wall is now set. And I think if you can get things to come through Arrowhead, you're in good shape for a championship run. How do you come away the day after?
Going back, I mean, you mentioned Nick Bolton, you mentioned Drew Tranquill. I think they both did very well. I saw Leo Chanel line up multiple times where it looked like he was going to be defensive end rushing. I think he rushed once or twice from that position, but it's not something they've done very often. That was interesting to see. I thought Willie Gay had some good plays early on. I'm not going to say he disappeared throughout the game, but specifically, you can go back and watch him blowing up a specific play, and he knifes in there, he gets the hit, and he gets it to where they're not able to convert. And the Chiefs holding Miami to, I think it was 1 of 12 on third down. You can't ask for anything more. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you're playing that kind of defense, most teams are not going to be able to go for it on fourth down in those scenarios most of the time. So you're going to be in a great position if you can hold them to that scenario where you're at, 1 of 12 for third down. And it wasn't like Miami was moving the ball up and down the field either. Tua threw for just over 100 yards, I believe. I mean, it was just, almost 200 yards. I apologize. But a lot of that came to Tyreek Hill on one play and 53 yards. Holding Hill to 9 yards on 4 receptions on other than the touchdown. You have to feel good about all of those things.
Yeah, I mean, it sets you up for success down the line. It gives you a pretty good feeling that in what is maybe the harshest conditions we've seen in 4 or 5 seasons, they were able to step that up and prepare themselves against maybe the most explosive team in this playoff run. Now, they limited, I think, what's even bigger than taking Tyreek to where they did. They did the same thing in Germany. So that expectation, I feels like a checkbox that was fulfilled for me rather than something new. But what was new is they held Mostert to 3 yards a carry for 37 yards total, and they shut Devin A-Chain down. And that's the big difference for me. If you can do that in the playoffs, when you're talking about maybe facing Christian McCaffrey later in this run, that's a significant step forward for this defense.
Mostert was 8 for 33, so 4.1 yards per carry, so a little bit more than 3, but still feel pretty good about that. A-Chain 6 for 9 yards, 1.5 yards per carry. That is phenomenal defense. And really the guy, I mean, Jalen Waddle had 1 for 9, so I don't really count that, but the guy that beat him when you run the ball was Tua, 3 for 25 for 8.3. You don't normally see Tua run the ball, but he had to just to have a chance to play against the Chiefs last night. Sorry, I guess it was Saturday night. And it's just kind of crazy because their defense really showed up when it counted. Still a little bit of unknown when it comes to a guy like Derek Nottie, whether or not he's going to be available for the next game. When you start talking about the run, he's very important for that. But I do feel good they brought back Mike Pennell. I do think that if Nottie is not able to go, maybe they'll bring Pennell, maybe they'll activate Pennell and put Nottie on IR. That would stink for Nottie, but at the same time, I do feel like Pennell can give you that run presence in the middle.
Yeah, and let's be real, this is why they signed Isaiah Bucks. I think that was more about next season and backfilling Derek Nottie for a true run-oriented stuffer first. But hey, if you feel he's in shape, and he should be in shape because he played for a long time before he was let go, I feel like that's a really, really advantageous pull-up right now that they were just able to make, and sets them up for success going forward. They have a lot of things that they need for success going forward, and one is to understand themselves. I think the offense really got confirmation about that last night. How do they take that and double down on it going forward? We're talking about the offense coming up next.
The NFL season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. It's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you want to go bet on the Packers versus the 49ers, we already know about that game coming up next week. There is still time to bet on the Bills and the Steelers, and also the Eagles and the Buccaneers. So many different games that are going on right now in the NFL. You can still go bet on the NBA as well. Lots of great games that going on in the NBA. The app is easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and much, much more. So visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Ryan's muted.
Sometimes this happens, with the technology. Make sure you check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast feed. It is 24/7. It gives you a lot of information, not just this team, but a lot of teams, and obviously a lot of key games going on here. There's going to be a Monday night game. Didn't really plan for that, but there's going to be one. If you want more information, make sure you check out that feed. It's not about Monday night other than who the opponent is, but what it is about is taking what they learned. And it's not just from the freezer game, but also from week 17 against the Cincinnati Bengals and doubling down. There's 3 pillars of the takeaway for me, and I want your opinion on each of them. And first and foremost, it is, yes, this was a diminished pass rush. The Bengals was not. And I do think that we see a little bit more substantial understanding of how to protect Patrick Mahomes. When you can do that, last night with the example that no matter what the conditions, if you can keep people off of him, this offense can run and move down the field.
Well, you bring that up. Mahomes got hit one time last night, or against the Dolphins. You go back and you look at the Bengals game. There were 7 total pressures, 1 sack, 4 hits, and 2 hurries. That is phenomenal pass blocking. And if they can continue to do that, especially against a Bills team who hasn't been great with the pass rush, Von Miller is not a guy that is being as productive as he has been in past years. We'll see if that changes on Monday afternoon in the game against Pittsburgh. But then there's also going to be a situation where he's going to have to go up against Kansas City, and we'll see how they attack that. But I do think that the Chiefs have to feel good about it regardless. If they're playing the Bills, they've already played them once this year. They know what they're going to be getting into. If they're playing the Texans, it's going to be a whole new ball game with them, but you're hosting it at home and you have home field advantage. And I'm going to be curious to see if the Texans have an offense that could travel and play in the cold, because while I don't believe it's going to be as cold as it was this past weekend, it's still going to be pretty frigid in Kansas City for the next game if they end up hosting it next week.
Still January in the Midwest. I completely agree with you.
Yep.
Number 2 for me, pillar that I came away with is that for the Chiefs offense, you got to know who you are, and they understand who they are now. They have to run the ball. They got 24 carries, Isaiah Pacheco, against maybe the hardest ground they've had to run against, and he did look just as angry at the ground as he ever does. against the Dolphins. But I think while that may be even more than Andy wanted to, I do think that was weather related. But every time they've been able to hit the 18 mark with Isaiah Pacheco, good things happen. That has to continue. And I think they started to realize that. There are a couple of trickles in the offense that are key to continue to move downfield. Isaiah Pacheco and the run game in general, because I think Clyde gave you some good runs as well, some grinded out yards, especially that last first down that he had to get basically by himself. I think the run game is in Andy's head now that he understands it has to be a player they stand on.
Yeah, and that last one was a pass, and the Clyde did a fantastic job. You're right. He caught the ball about 3 yards and fought for the 2 yards extra through 2 defenders. It was fantastic to see from him. Pacheco, 24 carries, 89 yards, 3.7 is your average. The crazy thing about that is if you go look at the deeper stats on that, 60 yards after contact. I mean, you're sitting there at almost 3 yards per rush after contact. That is fantastic, especially in the elements. Clyde, had 3 yards average as well running the ball. Didn't do great running the ball, but it was enough to continue to move the sticks at times. There were some good runs by him. I'm not trying to say he didn't, but it wasn't as good as what we would hope. But it's still productive.
It's what I agree with. But go back and take a look at it, right? It was 7 attempts, 21 yards, right? It was 21 yards after contact. Every single yard he got was after contact. So I give him a lot of credit that I don't think many people are making the rounds today. Fair. That he was more helpful than it appeared at first look.
Yeah, no, that's fair. After contact, that is absolutely hard yardage when you're running like that. And that says a lot about what Clyde is able to do. And I said this last night, and I'll say it again just because I want to make sure that it gets heard. I could care less about the fumble late in the game. I mean, obviously you want him to hold on to the ball, but you know what? The way they were playing that game, to have that fumble in that moment didn't really hurt. So stinks, but
I'll take it. If it had turned the game, then I think you'd worry about it a little bit more.
Right.
The last thing for me, we'll talk more this week. We'll have Matt Derrick coming up later. The verticality of it, getting yourself downfield, I do think that's important, but it's not quite, I think, where this lies for me. And that is the fact that at the end of the day, you got to be able to adapt to what you're getting. And this offense has now gotten to the point where it understands where Rashee Rice is at all times. It understands where Travis Kelce is. It understands what you have to do. And now it's about creating within that framework. You don't have to be the team that you were a season ago or 3 seasons ago. You have to be the best version of this team that you can, and that is good enough to win a championship. As long as you stay between those guardrails, I think they can get this done against anybody left in this field.
Rashee Rice, 77 yards, I believe. Yak. That's insane on 130 yards receiving. And not only did he have that, but he had 3.3 yards per route run. That is just phenomenal production, especially for a rookie. He set the rookie record for the Chiefs. Obviously, we talked about that. That's a big thing. But, you look at what he's been able to do this season. He's just been getting better and better and better. And it's going to be something that you got to be excited about. Even past 23, he is going to be a monster for this team, regardless of this year or next. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I just have to say, because we missed it, how about your QB running for 36 yards after contact? 41 yards total, 36 after contact. That's impressive by Mahomes. He went to a whole new level. And I have to ask you the same question I asked Matt Derrick. Have you ever seen a helmet bust like you saw Mahomes's bust in that game?
No, and Vicus, I think, is going to have to say something about that. But that is part of the design, as I understand. How it got so brittle despite the temperatures, I would hope that hadn't happened. But it is meant to give way at certain impact points should you get that kind of collision. So it's not like the old days where it's meant to just be, like a World War II bucket that never bends or breaks. So it did, in a certain sense, do its job. But yeah, that temperature testing, I think, is going to have to be revisited by that particular company. And I like that you put it that way. And I want to emphasize one thing. 3.3 yards per route run for Rashee Rice was 150% of what Tyreek Hill did. Just think about that. Just think about it.
And how much fun did you see? How much fun did you have watching L'Jarius Sneed just absolutely manhandle Tyreek Hill at the line of scrimmage?
few things have made me happier. I got to tell you, because it's one thing to jam a guy and a guy that's that explosive and that elusive to be able to get that quick jam off the go. But it's a whole other thing to just bury him into the ground and keep him from being able to even run a route. And that's the kind of things that makes my stomach tingle.
Yeah. And one last question before we go. I have to ask this about defense because Matt and I talked about it last night. What did you think about the 2-man rushes that the Chiefs had from time to time, where they actually threw more linebackers and DBs on the field and only had 2 guys going after the QB?
Generally, I'm a little bit wary of that because, I mean, as you saw, Tua can get out and run if he has to. I think they did it sparingly enough and well-timed enough that it didn't hurt him. Now, I wouldn't go to that against, obviously Lamar Jackson or Allen.
Right.
But you might be able to do that against CJ Stroud. I mean, CJ is not a big scrambler, and I think it's just another layer of versatility and disguise that Steve Spagnuolo can utilize, and I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting, and I would argue that I think you could use it on Allen if you use it sparingly enough on certain situations. Just because you disguise it, if you disguise it well enough, that's the question. And one of the ways you can disguise it is using Leo Chanel as a guy that looks like he's going to get up on the line and rush and drops back into coverage. I mean, that's one of the ways they could do it.
Very true. Very true. Folks, we'd like to know what you think. What are your takeaways and how do you feel about where this offense and defense stand? We'll be waiting to find out who the Chiefs are going to play. We'll have that for you tomorrow on Tuesday's show. We have a lot more coming this week. Matt Derrick's coming up. We will have a crossover with whoever the other opponent is, and we will get you prepared for that ball game just like always. We appreciate you being with us. We appreciate your patience with me. I had a family outing. I've been screaming at volleyball for the last couple of days. So shout out to my daughter's teams. And I appreciate you guys. Thank you for being here, Chris, and thanks for manning the night last night.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's a good time. Make sure you like and you subscribe and you go check out the Locked On Sports Today feed. We would love to have you over there as well as here where you can like, sub, and hit that bell. We appreciate you spending your day with us. Hope you enjoyed the weekend and you're starting to warm up. We'll be back with you tomorrow, and we'll be here all week getting ready for your next Chiefs playoff ball game. Have a good one. We'll talk to you tomorrow.